Hey guys, so we're going to start the chisels. Let's do it. We've got loads of chisels to make. We've got some really basic ones, and we've got some slightly more nuanced ones. I think they're pretty straightforward, but they're not used in every project, and that's why I would call them that. And then you have your specialty chisels that are almost like stamps themselves. So whether you want to call these chisels or punches or whatever the language we need to make the chisels or the tools we need to make better work, that's what I'm interested in. So let's make some of these things. We're going to start with the liners. They're in almost every project. You could use a stippler instead if you want to skip this altogether. But in some detailed work, you'll need these no matter what. So the straight liners they're straightforward. It's just a line. I mean, my first straight liners were just sharp, like the sharp cold cut chisels that then I made smooth instead of sharp. I even had some, oh gosh, I probably have it on the bench. Yeah, I've got old screwdrivers that this one is chrome vanadium. It's a pretty brutal alloy, and I've used this to chase on stainless steel, and it's held its edge. You know, all I did was smooth it out. So straight liners, I'm gonna leave those out. They're easy enough. I think everyone can kind of manage that on their own. But the curved liners, you might need a hand, so let's start there.
Here we have the start of what I did for a whole bar. It was a 3-foot bar. If you break it down to 4.5 inches, which is a preferred chisel length, as I'll mention in the following video, talking about chisel descriptions and lengths and choice making and what steel to pick and whether you want square stock or round stock or what have you. I chose a round stock. I chose a round stock because I think a lot of other people will choose round stock because it's cheaper. You could forge it down. I'm starting here because I think a lot of people will choose to grind instead of to forge. Not because forging isn't a better way. I think it is better. I like the texture it leaves. I like the way it compresses the steel. I think all around forging is a better choice. However, for the common person, you might not have a forging setup, but a hand vise is very cheap. It's very affordable. So all we did was grind down. You can see I made 3 squares and I made 2 ovals. Those are for the chisels in the upcoming videos. All we did was grind down either parallel or, in the square case, square, but we didn't take it to a sharp edge. We left the corners nice and round. I love that. It feels so good in the hand. So I ground it down with a probably 80 grit flapper wheel for an angle grinder. And then, we just took it to a Magic Cut hand file. The Magic Cut hand files are very affordable, and a link is in the video, the tool supply video for tool making that I made before the UK tour back, oh my gosh, it was probably September, I think. In this portion, what I'm doing is we're just making sure that it's true. On the vise, I was able to get all those planes flat, but did I make a square or did I make a slight diamond? So that's my choice making there. And now we're just making the surface, the part that's actually going to hit the metal, perfectly flat, perfectly perpendicular. And this is probably one of the more important steps, because if you start with perfectly perpendicular, it's going to save you so much time. Because as all those planes and all the sides of the chisel comes down and into the frontal focus, if you started not true, not straight, then it's not very good. you'll be chasing those slight imperfections for a long time. And that's why I think forging is superior, because you can prepare a lot of these facets, or a lot of the angles you actually need, way earlier in advance. So near the working end of the chisel, I'm taking the corners down, and those long, nice smooth edges, so it's not a sharp square, is not just comfortable to hold. It helps us keep the whole chisel even. It helps you find dead center, because we are making a curved liner, so I want to find as close to middle as I can. The geometry of a chisel, you can get away with a lot. You don't have to have a perfect chisel, but it is still really, really helpful to get it as close as you can, or as close as you have the time to get it. And it's pretty easy to make time when you can compartmentalize the investment in the chisel at this stage is essentially an investment in the rest of the hours that you'll spend behind it. I could realistically spend, anywhere from, 8 to 15 hours, depending on the size of the project, per week with just this single chisel. So if it's a really big project and I have to do a lot of lining, that's not unrealistic. For a easier week, obviously, it probably won't be so bad. But all those hours, they do add up. So the diamond I'm actually making, so both of the corners have now come to a point, and they've helped me find the middle, the length of the chisel, and to help me find, dead center. And so as I bring those corners in and I true them up, then I'll come back on the longer side of what is essentially only a straight liner right now. So you can make a straight liner just like this, and then choose how sharp you want to make it. But we're going to bring it pretty close. We're not going to make it so we can cut with it, because here we're going to, not here, I'm just cleaning up. I'll use this hand file later. I'm just making sure that the sides are in fact parallel. So this hand file has a slightly coarser grit. It's just slightly coarser, and it has a slightly different finish, and it will remove the metal a little slower than the Magic Cut file. So switching back to the Magic Cut, I'm going to use a rounding motion to put the curve into one side. Now the angle that you might want will be dependent on how sharp you want the chisel. I like a bevel. I like a fairly broad bevel, but I do have much sharper ones as well. Here's the important part right here. Nice and clean, super flat. So the curved liner has two sides. The curved side we made with the curving motion, and then that side, that one little touch, that very true angle, that one flat plane right there, that will help you make a very versatile tool. Now at this point, the curved liner is rather sharp. Okay, so I'm just going to clean up some of the geometry and make sure it's exactly what I want, because again, whatever is on the end of that chisel will get imprinted into everything. So if you have a curve that isn't slightly even, you might need to true it up just a little bit. And so at this point, I will switch to a coarse diamond stone, and I'm just going to true up the finish. This saves me a little bit of cleanup time after hardening and tempering. Now, if you didn't want to do this at this stage, that's fine. And if you were a little nervous about ruining the geometry, that, like, let's say it's perfect, but you need to take it down to another grit, I wouldn't bother with this step. I'm doing this step to be thorough. Sometimes I will just go from the hand files straight to 280 sandpaper, just to take a little bit of the bite away from the edge, so that the expansion and contraction of the hot steel won't have something too harsh corners to find. The reason you can get away with that is because after you harden this thing, you can, after just hardening, not tempering, after just hardening, you can then come back in with the diamond stones and reliably remove just what you want. Because the resistance in the steel is higher. If you're a little nervous about truing up the geometry because you're so close or it's so perfect that you don't want to go any further, it would be after the hardening, not after the tempering, that then you could come back in with those diamond stones and just give yourself whatever finish or whatever polish that you want. And that's a really helpful way to resist the urge to just take it straight to a high cutting buffing compound on a polishing wheel. Like, resist the urge. At the very end, if you just needed to just touch it on the buffing wheel, that's a really easy way to get a mirror finish. But the mirror finish will hide the imperfections in the geometry in the beginning. So that's why you would only use that as late as possible. We'll talk about buffing compounds and things later. And again, all of these tools I'm using is in the tool video I made earlier. So if you'll go through my Patreon page and look at what's available there, you'll definitely find the supplies you'll need for tool making. And I will go through hardening and tempering in a separate video. Because I want to show the hardening and tempering for different styles of steel. So that is a slightly different topic and doesn't have the raw geometry in and of itself. So I just thought that would be it'd be a better video. It would be a better video to just have it as a nice clean topic and later. Using that diamond stone on the outside curve like that can improve visibility. So some of my posture is not really influenced by the camera, but the camera is super close, and so sometimes I will try and change the angle so the camera can actually see what I'm seeing. So looking down the barrel of that gun is exactly what I kind of wanted right there. So now we're done. I mean, it's really not a complicated chisel. You essentially just need a controlled taper to fit the size of the chisel you want. Bring it down to that nice curve you're going to put on the end. Make sure you don't have any burr edges on the end of that chisel. And then at the very end, you'll make that just that one flat spot. Why don't we take a quick look at some other curved liners that I have available here in just a second. But you can really see that curve. It's subtle. It's very subtle. There's the others. So that's the original that I made years and years ago. And it still holds an edge. It's still really, really strong. These are two different kinds of steel. The one on the left is a garage door spring. And the one on the right is A2 air hardening steel. So I wanted to see what the feel and the difference in the two are. You can see my original one is a little rough because I was forging in a bit of a hurry. And I think I pull some other sizes real quick. So if you wanted to make a smaller one, all you would do is that square at the beginning that we started with, make that square smaller. Make a taper before adding your curved liner geometry onto the end of that. But that's all there is to it, really. Just make sure you get the taper that you want. It's a super critical chisel. I love it to death. I use it every day. I've used it for like the last 7 years. Couldn't speak higher of it. So try it out. Test it for